Okay, today we are going to know about interpersonal skills. What are interpersonal skills? If we talk about interpersonal skills, actually what are the attributes when I talk about interpersonal skills? What I think is what are the attributes which adds to the interpersonal skills? Attributes is something which is within us, number one, okay, within us. The second one is around us, that's what we are accommodated to, and the last one is within the universe. So when we are talking about the interpersonal skills, we look at the attributes. What are the attributes to interpersonal skills? Now when we look and go ahead with interpersonal skills, rather than looking at the attributes which are within us, around us and within the universe, there are several rules and guidelines which are to be followed. When you go through interpersonal skills, you see there are a set of rules which you need to follow so that you create the impact in front of the other person and you are able to conquer. Okay, and why? When I ask you why interpersonal skills, when the question is asked in the personality development that why we go through the interpersonal skills, the answer is very easy. The first one, which is impact, creating the impact is very important wherever you are working or wherever you stand. Second thing that we make a note of after impact is what is your personality. Okay, when it comes to interpersonal skills, we see about the personality as well. And the third thing and the last thing is what is the profit that you are going to make with your interpersonal skills. And now when I talk about profit, it has got several branches like individual profit which you can create for yourself. The second one is corporate profit, and the last one is social profit. When we go ahead with interpersonal skills, we see the attributes to interpersonal skills. Those are which are written within us, around us and within the universe. And now when I ask you the question, why interpersonal skills? Why is it really important for us? We know because we need to create an impact. Okay, a common man cannot do all the things. Okay, it should be someone out of the crowd, as we say, out of the box thinking. So in the similar case, if you go ahead with interpersonal skills, we teach interpersonal skills in personality development because you need to understand that what impact are you going to create with a good interpersonal skill that you already have within you. Now when you create an impact, your personality is reflected. People know you through your name, people know you through your work, and so on, so on. So, the third thing that creates profit. Profit can be three types. The first one is individual profit, the second can be the corporate profit, and the third is the social profit that you can create. Now, getting to the interpersonal skills, we will see next that what is interpersonal skills. When we go to the next thing, we see that what are the different theories, what are the different scenarios, and what are the different criteria which have been listed till date to understand what is interpersonal skills. And we are going through some of the extents wherein we can see the interpersonal skills as one of the main criteria. Now getting to the main criteria, we can see over here that listening, language and communication, questioning, conflict handling and using feedback. So if you actually go ahead with interpersonal skills, it has to do with language and communication. Okay, language and communication. How do you communicate with the other person is very important. After language and communication, it is important to listen to people. what we do is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply, and that shouldn't be the case. Why? Because we are not here to just reply to someone. We are here to hear someone, listen to someone, and understand the thing. That is why I say listening is not to reply, not to reply, but to understand what the other person is talking about. The second thing which comes after listening is very important, which is conflict handling. Why I talk about conflict handling? Because there can be feedbacks which we get usually. Alright, when we see the feedbacks, we see that in interpersonal skills, the feedbacks are very important. How are we doing? What are we doing? And if we are doing it wrong, what perfect idea should be used? So today we are dealing with interpersonal skills. When we talk about interpersonal skills, we see at the attributes, that is what is within us, around us, and within the universe, and also we see why interpersonal skills we see, because we need to create an impact. The personality is to be recognized, and the profile, that is individual, corporate, or the social. And after this, when we see the interpersonal skills, the facilitation of the skills, the language and the communication, listen. I talk about it not to reply. We are listening not to reply, but we are listening to understand. That's the main thing, that we are listening the thing. Now, after this, when it comes to conflict handling, we see that there is questioning. We question the people why, how, where, when. And the second thing is feedback. Feedback is always to be taken in a positive note. Okay, why? Because it is for the improvement of us, that we improve again and again. So when we improve, the conflict handling will be there always with us. So after that, when we see, go ahead with it, when we see towards the next one, and we see that there are so many things that come into consideration, and we will look ahead with so many examples. Now, essential IP competencies. Now, what are the essential IP? IP means interpersonal skills. What are the essential IP of the competencies? Competencies is nothing but the advantages or the fields on which you have a good command. So we should always remember, when it comes to competencies, of interpersonal skills, there is self-awareness. Okay, there is self-awareness. We need to understand where do we have to go. The second thing that we need to know is about control. When we control things, we are at a good pace. The third thing is motivation. How are we motivated? After the motivation, when we go ahead, we see the acknowledging of the interest, acknowledgement. When we see acknowledge, now what do I mean by acknowledge? Acknowledge is nothing but when you try to acknowledge the interest of your subordinates. Okay, you are trying to understand why the other person is behaving in a different manner. It is the acknowledgement that is going ahead with it. And the final thing which comprises of all is communication skills, and that is why we are doing the personality development. It is the communication skills that will actually gauge what self-awareness do you have, what control do you have, what motivational factor do you have, and what acknowledgement can you do. When I say self-awareness, what is actually self-awareness? Self-awareness is nothing but knowing about yourself. When you know about yourself, you look at different things with a different perspective. Why I say say different thing at a different perspective, because they are notions which are already in your mind, which you have inherited from generations. And if you are self-aware of your competencies, that your potential I'm talking about, if you are aware of your potential, you can go ahead and accomplish any job that is related to your field. So, when we go ahead with self-awareness, we should know about ourselves. What am I? What are the roots which keep me grounded? What are the fruits which I can produce? And what is the height that I can achieve? It comes along with control. Why I say control? Because when it is about controlling someone, it is not very difficult task. But when it comes to controlling yourself, it becomes a difficult task, because we have to control our emotions. Number one, we have to control our anger. Number two, and the third thing and final thing is we have to control whatever we are doing. So when I talk about do it, okay, when I talk about do it, we go ahead with the control. We control what all we can do. Motivation. Motivation is very, very important. If I take things out of communication skills, it is the motivation that is very important. Why motivation is very important? Because unless you are able to motivate yourself, unless you are able to go ahead with some task which has been already assigned to you, you will be not in a good position to go ahead and accomplish it. So you need to be motivated. When I talk about motivation, okay, the mean value of motivation should be there. The mean value of the motivation should be there. Why I talk about the mean value? Because the motivation should not be too high, so that you think the task that has been assigned to you is very easy, okay, on the first hand. The second thing, if your motivation is too low, you will be afraid of accomplishing that task. It should be always a mean value, that is the appropriate amount of motivation that you should carry away with yourself, so that you can actually go ahead and complete the task. And acknowledgement. Why I say acknowledgement? Because you know, it is very many times said that it is very easy not to acknowledge somebody's good work, somebody's hard work, okay? But if you seriously want to go ahead in your life, you need to acknowledge whatever the other person is trying to do. So, you acknowledge your subordinates, you give them motivation, you tell it was a good work, it was a good job, and you need to keep the good work. Okay, so that kind of acknowledgement should always be there with your subordinates. And when it comes to all these four, that is self-awareness, control, motivation, and acknowledgement, it comes through the communication skills that you have. If you have good communication skills, people will get to know you. I say it's an open book. It's a chapter that has been written and shown to the people. When it comes to control, people are aware that you have a good control of yourself. When it comes to motivation, you can do the best job which has been assigned to you and acknowledge the person. Now, coming to the next one, developing the IP skills. What and how do we develop the IP skills, that is interpersonal skills? Now, developing assertiveness. When I say developing assertiveness, I say that you have to assert to some or the other task which has been assigned to you. You have to put some pressure on it. You have to go ahead with whatever has been assigned to you. So develop the assertiveness and you will be able to go ahead and become the best person in your field. That is why we also go ahead with accepting the responsibility. Now, developing of the interpersonal skills. If I say we need to develop the IP, that is interpersonal skills, the most important thing is assertiveness. Now when we are assertive, we need to know what we can do and what we can't do. The second thing which I told you around here is accepting responsibility. Now when you accept the responsibility, you know you can do it. Okay, it is said that I can and I will. So if you accept the responsibility, you know that you can and you will. And the first and the most important one is conflict handling. When you see and talk about conflict handling, you know when to avoid the conflict, when to accommodate with the conflict, when to enforce the conflict, and what is the collaboration that you are getting out of that particular conflict, and compromising with the conflict. There are 5 things which you can do with the conflict handling. When it comes to conflict handling, you can actually have the 5 rules which you can actually follow. Now the 5 rules, again I tell you, is 1, you can avoid the conflict. Number 2 is you can accommodate with the conflict. Number 3 is you can force the conflict. Number 4 is the collaboration with the conflict. And the number 5 is compromising. There are several ways when we compromise what to do and what not to do. Now, what are the life positions? If I talk about life positions, when we are talking about interpersonal skills, we talk about life positions. There are 4 types of life positions, and what are they? They are I'm okay, you are not okay. I'm okay, you are okay. The third one is I'm not okay, you are not okay. And the 4th one is I'm not okay, you are okay. So what do we go ahead and what do we understand with these few life positions? Okay, if you are concerning yourself with the other person, if you are actually competing with someone, or if you are actually trying to have a relationship with some of the people, what should be the best life position? Should it be that you get the advantage and the other person is in loss? Or should it be the other person gets in loss or you get the advantage? Or the third position is you also are in the loss and the other person is also in the loss. And the 4th one is you are in the profit and the other person is also in the profit. So when it comes to life positions, it should always be a win-win situation that we count upon. Okay, a win-win situation means I'm okay and you are also okay. That is, I'm in profit and you also are in profit. When we look at the life position, we see there are several management of the conflict styles. When we go ahead with the management conflict styles, we again go ahead with self-awareness, control, motivation, and acknowledgement. When I talk about managing conflict, how do actually you accommodate yourself related to the situation that you are put into? It might be an adverse situation or it can be a situation which you are very easy in. So how do you manage your conflict is very important. When you go ahead with managing your conflicts, it should be always that the 5 things which I told you. Now, factors hampering interpersonal interactions. There are few things which I call in interpersonal skills that really go ahead with that, what we say is hampering the factors. Hampering factors are poor listening. When I told you about listening, I said do not listen to reply, but listen to understand what the other person is saying. So, the factors which are hampering to interpersonal interaction which you are having with any of your co-workers, peer, friends, boss, family, friends, neighborhoods, anyone in the universe, the factors which may be hampering your interpersonal skills is poor listening. When you actually do not listen to things, okay, when you are actually trying to reply to whatever is being said to you rather than understanding what the other person is trying to say is very important. Now, emotional arousal, that is the second factor which hampers your interpersonal skills. Why do I say that? Because we should always have empathy with the other person. Okay, we should not be tempted by the emotions those are within us, and the emotions those are within us will not create an impact when we are talking to somebody else. Now, why? Because there is always a lack of time. There is a gap between me and the other person while we are interacting to each other. He's on some other line and I'm on some other line. So the gap between those two is what I say as emotional arousal. You know why? Because we feel different about that situation and that person is feeling different of the same situation. So when we are going ahead with a lack of time, we do not actually keep pace with time so that we do a good interaction with the other person. We always see a gap between these two things. And then there is a gap between these two things. You are not competent enough to be known as a person with good interpersonal skills. And the last one that factors hampers is differences in objective. If you have a different objective than the other person, you will be in a different situation, in a different mood, in a different land altogether than the person you are interacting to. So if you have got differences in objective, let us say I want to work in IT. I'm very much encouraged and I feel very enthusiastic when I go ahead with IT talks. And you are a person who is very familiar with medical things, okay, and you have got an objective to talk about the medical things in a very professional manner. So I being in IT and you being in medical, we two have two different objectives. One person is related to the health and I am related to the IT field. So when I go ahead to talk to you, we cannot actually match, okay? There is a mismatch when we go ahead with the interaction that we are trying to have with the other person. Now, what is the transactional analysis that you can do? An unidentified system of individual and social psychiatry focuses on the individual but one's relationship to the other. So what I'm trying to tell you about is the unidentified system of the individual, which we are focusing as of right now, is focusing more on the individual but also one's relationship to the other. Why? Because we are trying to talk about social psychiatry. So when I'm talking about myself, I'm also talking about my relations to the other people. A model for explaining why and how. It is a model to explain the answers, to give the answer of why and how. Because people think like they do. Okay, you cannot change the people thinking what they want to do. People act like they do. You cannot change their actions. And people interact and communicate with others as per their wish. So when I'm talking about the psychiatry, the social psychiatry which we want to talk about over here, if I write it as social psychiatry that we are trying to point out is people have different opinions, okay? They act, they think, and they communicate in the manner that they want to, okay? So these are the things that we go ahead with the different professions. Right now, we see that the transactional analysis which we are having for the social psychiatry is what people think, they will think in the same manner. You cannot go and change that. How they act, you cannot change that. How they communicate, you cannot change that. And it is Eric Berne and the transactional analysis. It's known as the Eric Berne and the transactional analysis. Continuing with it, people have three ego states: parent, adult, and child. Now when I say ego, okay, because we are trying to talk about the social psychiatry, and we see that the ego is either of a parent, it's either of a child, or it's either of an adult. Okay, because we always, and it's always said that there are different views. Okay, our sons will think that they are more intelligent than us. Their sons will think they are more intelligent than their father. So generation upon generation, when we cross through so many borders, we see that when we are talking about interpersonal skills and the social psychiatry, that is the transactional analysis given by Berne, we see that the ego is surrounded by the age. Okay, it might be an adult, it might be a child, or it might be a parent when you are talking about it. Parent. Now when we talk about the transactional analysis, we see what a parent thinks. Parent, when a person thinks, feels and behaves in the way copied from his or her parents. As I said, it follows on generation to generation. Child, thinking, feeling, behaving as one did as a child. When they were a kid, how did they enact? And adult, how does the adult psychiatry works? Adults, thoughts, feelings and behaviors that are direct results of the current happenings. And the key point over here is people shift in and out of these situations. When I say people shift in and out of these situations, why do we go ahead with it? Because when I'm talking about ego and the social psychiatry, we see the parent can become a child at some point of time, the adults can become a child at some point of time, the child can become the parent at some point of time, and the adult can become the parent at some time. So this ego is actually shifting. Okay, this ego is actually shifting according to the situation that you are put in. Alright, getting the point? If your ego is shifting from time to time, you might act as a parent, you might act as an adult, or you might act as a child. Now, building positive relationships. How do you build positive relationship? Use of I. When you say I, it's you individual. When we say we are counting as a group. Now, focus on the problem solving. What is the problem? Don't be decisive. Alright? Have empathy with yourself and try to listen to other people to understand them and not to interact or interrupt or reply to them. Alright? Use of praise. Be specific. If you're praising someone, be specific about it. Okay? Praise progress. When somebody is progressing, you should always praise it. Be sincere in your appraisals. Okay? When you're praising someone, be honest and be sincere. Do not overdo. Okay? If you're even praising, do not overdo it. Because if you're praising someone, do not go ahead and say, oh, thank you, you were best, you're the best, you're the best. Do not overdo it. Do it with the allocated timings. When it's time to praise someone, we go ahead and do the best part which we can do. Now, the most important thing which I said is conflict handling. Now, we are dealing with criticism. How to deal with criticism? Because people all around the world have an articulate to criticize someone or the other at some point. Okay, how do we actually go ahead and deal with criticism? When somebody is criticizing us about our work, somebody is criticizing us about our dreams, or someone is criticizing us about the aims that we have or the goals we have in our life. Understand the reason behind it. Why people are actually criticizing me. That's the most important thing. Why people are criticizing me. Have empathy with them. Okay? When they are criticizing you, you put yourself in their shoes, and when you put yourself in their shoes, you understand it in a much better manner that why the other person is going ahead with such things or such talk. Do not personalize criticism. If a criticism is given to you, you do not have to personalize it to yourself and limit it to yourself. Do not be too judgmental. Okay, do not judge that this person is criticizing me, so he is or she is not a good friend of mine. That's not the thing. When we are trying to accept the criticism, we should not be judgmental. And do not overload yourself with the criticism. Because everyone, alright, or I say every first person out of the four will be criticizing you. So do not keep on the overload of the criticism again and again and again on yourself so that you are under the pressure. You should always understand how to accept the criticism. You should have the reason behind it. You should have empathy with the person and not personalization of the criticism that has been given to you, and you are not being judgmental. Now, negotiations. How do you do negotiations with the other people? When I talk about criticism, I'm trying to adopt myself according to the surroundings. When I talk about negotiations, what do I do actually to negotiate with the other person? What is negotiation? But it's nothing but selling yourself or selling your idea to the other person. First thing that you have to do is planning in negotiation. The first thing, very first thing, if I talk about negotiation, if I'm talking about negotiation, the very first thing is planning. When you plan how to negotiate, you will be in a better format. Interpersonal relationship building. You have to build an interpersonal relationship, what we call as IBR, interpersonal relationship. Now, after that, it's exchanging task-related information that we say as exchange of information. Exchange of information. After taking the informations, there is the persuasion. What is persuasion? Nothing but we persuade the other person to accept our thought, to buy our thoughts or ideas. And the final stage is agreement, when the person agrees to us. This is the steps of negotiation. The negotiation tactics and behavior. What is the location? What's the time? Buyer-seller relationship. Extreme behavior. Do not make fake promises or do not give threats to the other person. And using silence. When I say about using silence, it again comes to listening. When you are listening, it's not to reply but to understand what the other person is trying to say. Now, when I talk about it, when I go ahead with all the interpersonal skills, once again, let me tell you all that when we are talking about interpersonal skills, it is about language and communication, it's about listening, and it's about conflict handling. When we come to conflict handling, we see the questions that are asked to us and the feedback that is given to us. It's a positive manner. We take it in a positive manner and we listen not to reply but to understand. The competencies or the potential that we have are self-awareness, which should be over there so that we have the optimal organizational behavior in the proper position. We should have the control, we should have the motivation and the acknowledgement, which will come through the communication skills that you have. And when we are talking about motivation, as I told you, we should use the mean value. And why interpersonal skills? It is because of the attributes that we are going ahead, that those are within us, around us, and within the universe. After that, why interpersonal skills? Because to create an impact, the personality and the profit. might it be individual or for the corporate or for any social cause. When we come to the social psychiatry, we see people think, act and communicate as per as their wish. And this shift which is given can be categorized into parent, child and adult. Okay, and the shift keeps happening as per the time and the situation. And the final thing which we go ahead in the negotiation. So negotiation is the planning, the interpersonal relationships, the exchange of the information, the persuasion, and for the last, the interaction or the agreement which is taking place towards. Alright, so when we are talking about interpersonal skills, remember it is to think out of the box and to stand out of the crowd. Why interpersonal skills? Because we need to stand outside of the crowd and not in the crowd. If you are in the crowd, you are not recognized, your personality is not named, and you are not in the proper gesture that you should be. That is why we use interpersonal skills, so that we are one among many. That is why we use interpersonal skills. And all these factors and facts and figures, those I have given to you, will make you a better person with a better personality, a better attitude, so that when we say about attitude, we talk higher the attitude you have, and the higher the altitude you will achieve in life. So the interpersonal skills is nothing but about your personality and the relationship with the other person around you. Alright?